ARE Podcast, episode number 6.
Welcome to the ARE Podcast. ARE Podcast, where it's all about encouraging and inspiring you today so you can fulfill your dream of becoming a licensed architect tomorrow. And now your host. His idea of a romantic evening is sitting around a campfire at Yosemite, David Doucette.
Hello, and Happy New Year here in the middle of January. Welcome to our first episode of this year, episode number 6, where we're going to talk all about goals and setting goals, and hopefully setting goals that are going to help you become a licensed architect this year. And joining us, Eric Corey Freed from Boston, my alma mater, and you're teaching at the Boston Architectural College this week.
Yeah, they took the shrine that they built for you. They took that down. That's not here anymore.
That's not there anymore.
No, I kept looking for it. I asked everybody. They said, no, that's a parking lot now.
David who? How's the weather there?
I don't know how you lived here, frankly. First of all, it's schizophrenic. One day it's raining and hot, and the next day it's cold and dry, and then I'm sweating and I'm freezing and I'm wet and confused. It's like being in a bad relationship. That's what it's like. And this is why the people here are so nuts and they drive the way they do, because it's making them all crazy.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I lived there for 8 years, and there's a reason why I've been in Southern California for 13 years now, and there's a reason why I'm going to stay here.
Yeah, you're much too mellow to live here, I think, now. I don't know what you were like back then, but it's weird. And then I drove through South Boston today, just to see if I could get my ass kicked.
Yeah,
really, that's the only reason I was there.
Marky Mark territory.
Right.
All right, so let's jump into it. So we're going to talk about goal setting, and we have a lot of stuff that we're going to cover today. And I think part of what we're going to talk about is setting goals. It could be personal goals, professional goals, but also goals specific to figuring out how we're going to prepare for the ARE and pass all 7 exams this year. So the first thing let's talk about is really distinguishing between a goal and the practices or habits that help us achieve the goals, because I think sometimes that they're confusing. So I'll throw it to you. What is a goal?
A goal is a larger milestone, but it doesn't tie into any sort of daily practice, ritual, or habit that you're going to do. Like a typical goal would be, I want to lose 10 pounds. But it doesn't really explain how to get there. So you can't really set a goal without tying it to some sort of actionable item.
So you need the goal first, and then
Yes.
and then once you have the goal, then you figure out the practices or the habits that you are going to put into place to achieve that goal.
Yeah. So a goal for people listening would be, I want to pass CDS or I want to pass PPP. But an action would be, I want to pass CDS by March 15th. So to do that, I know that I need to study 2 hours a night, every night after work, except maybe Saturday night. So 6 times a week, 2 hours, But the big goal would be, I want to pass CDS.
Yeah, and I think it's important for us to make sure we're clear on that, because first off, we don't want to get too overwhelmed by too many goals. And I know the goal-setting people, if you listen to any of them, they say really setting 5 to 10 goals at the beginning of the year is about the max you want to do. So you don't want to become overwhelmed with the goals. And I think, if we want to pass, say, all 7 this year, I mean, those could be 7 distinct goals. I know some people listening have already maybe passed 5 and they only have 2 left. But that brings up prioritizing our goals, right? So we have our goals of whether it's passing CDS or PPP or SPD. Those are all goals, but the big goal is becoming a licensed architect. So that's the big prize. And then we have sort of, I guess we could call them secondary goals that will eventually lead us to the ultimate goal.
Exactly. And then, I like the idea of having primary goals and then sub goals or the secondary goals that you do under it. So for people listening, obviously, becoming a licensed architect would be a primary goal, and then each division of the area can be secondary, and then you can prioritize them. For me, I can tell you, I was terrified of structures of the exam. I was worried that I would fail it, so I took it first. In part to get it out of the way, but also because you'd have to wait 6 months before you could take it again. So I wanted to, I was kind of assuming that I would probably fail it. I didn't, luckily, so I never had to see that thing again until, of course, we wrote the study guide for it. Now I'm reliving the horror.
Which is interesting. If you haven't, if you're just tuning in for the first time to us, thank you for tuning in. But you might not have heard our own, I guess, different stories with the ARE. But you passed it in 16 weeks or something like that, right?
Yeah, I set a big goal. I wanted to be a licensed architect by a certain date. I set these secondary goals of doing the exams, and I set them all 2 weeks apart. And I figured, you know what? I'd rather just have no life for those 18 weeks instead of just drawing it out. I'm more of a rip the Band-Aid kind of person, unlike you. But I wanted to just get it over with. And also, I thought, well, I hear horror stories about the exam. If I don't pass them on the first try, I'll want the time to make them up, or to get new study materials or whatever I need. So, and I didn't have the greatest study materials. In fact, a large kind of guiding mantra that I've had when we've been working on this has been, I'm trying to write the materials that I wish I had, and I know you've been doing that too. Yeah. I could have gotten through them, I think, a lot less stressed if I had better study materials at the time. But it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, but you still get through it in 18 weeks, which is a pretty big achievement. I think I took 7 years. But I think that's an example of having a goal and not really having a goal. Obviously, you had your goals. You were committed to them. And when I started taking it, of course I wanted to become a licensed architect. But I didn't sort of have it planned out. I didn't really know how I would do it yet. I started taking the programming one first. I didn't create the roadmap. So I think that's an example of what can happen if you don't, take this seriously and create your goals. It took me 7 years. I eventually achieved my goal. I didn't give up on it, but it took a lot longer than it needed to.
Oh yeah, you're like the little engine that could, aren't you?
Exactly.
I think I can.
Which, that brings up the point of what happens when we don't achieve our goals. And, again, sort of the goal setting experts, or, Michael Hyatt is one of the guys that I follow, that, he says he doesn't achieve all his goals every year. If he sets 10 goals, he might achieve 5 of them in that year. But he makes the point, if I didn't set any goals, I might not have achieved those 5. So, and he talks about high achievers, which I think probably a lot of us architects are high achievers. We certainly learned that in architecture school. So I think it's okay if we don't meet our goals, but it's, we want to, I guess, keep our eye on the prize. And I'm thinking, with the ultimate goal of becoming a licensed architect and the secondary goals of taking PPP, for example, and not passing. So we didn't meet that goal, but we studied, we took the exam, and we didn't pass. So it doesn't mean we failed at that goal. We just have to keep going until we achieve that goal. Make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And part of that, and I got this from listening to Michael Hyatt and kind of other people, I think of the goals as being slightly out of reach. You don't want to set the bar too low. I think you'd be doing yourself a disservice to say, I want to pass one division of the ARE in all of 2014 or all of this year. I think you can do more than that. But you also don't want to, overtax yourself or bite off more than you can handle. So, having a good working plan works. I mean, at the time when I took the test, I didn't have much of a life. I was working. I didn't go out much. I didn't have any friends. I was a loser. No, I'm just kidding. But,
20 years later, what's changed?
Nothing's changed. I have a better haircut. But the thing is, I tied it to a schedule. they're your goals, so you can feel free to change them. So lay it out on a big calendar. I'm going to do this in this. In my case, I did it every 2 weeks. That was probably a little too aggressive, but if you know that you've got a deadline at work, if you know that you've got a wedding that you've got to go to, then plan that also into your calendar. I tell my grad students this when they do their coursework for the semester. Plan it into your calendar. Be realistic about it. You're only doing yourself a disservice by not. So you can be a high achiever, but not everybody's going to reach all their goals. They should be slightly out of reach. They should force us to reach a little bit, to extend beyond our grasp. And so in Michael Hyatt's example, he said 5 out of 10. That's a pretty good batting record, I think.
I think so too, because to your point, setting them a little out of our reach, because that's what motivates us. That's what keeps us in it. And, I think realistically, setting out a goal of passing one of these a month is a realistic goal that I think most people could probably fit into their routine if they were committed to do it. So that gives you 7 months to take it. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to pass every one the first time, but at least you're in it. And you have the best chance if you do that of reaching your goal by year's end of becoming a licensed architect.
Yeah, keep in mind back when we took it, the test was different. Now, with having both the multiple choice and the vignette on virtually every test, you almost need a full month at minimum to go through it. One of the other things Michael Hyatt said, and I've discovered this as well, if at the end of the year you discover that, you can congratulate yourself a little bit for doing 5 out of your 10 goals, it also gives you an opportunity to question, well, why didn't I do the other 5? And not beat yourself up over it, but maybe question the activities or the tasks that you assigned for yourself. When you mapped out, I was going to study 2 hours a day for 6 days a week. Was that too much? Was it too little? It gives you an opportunity to reflect. I do it twice a year. I do it in January. So I've been going through it now, and I do it again on my birthday in August. And it just is a kind of a chance to look at my goals for the year, and readjust.
And yeah, I think it's a good point of assessing your goals and reviewing your goals, and that's something I could certainly be better about. But to your point of when you don't reach a goal, there is definitely lessons to be learned in that process of why you didn't reach the goal. Why didn't I pass PPP, or why didn't I pass CDS? You take stock, you look at your study habits. Okay, maybe I didn't put enough time in, or maybe I didn't review a certain section enough. Maybe I need to review it more. So, I think it's kind of like goals are living, breathing thing that you just don't write them at the first of the year and then look at them again in October. And I've been guilty of that in the past. You write them down in January and you feel good, and then you kind of don't look at them again till October, November.
One of my goals last year was I wanted to walk more. And I wanted to walk 10,000 steps a day, and it was a somewhat arbitrary number, 10,000. It sounded good, really, but there were only a handful of days that I got even close to that, and oddly enough, those were days like at Greenbuild when I'm at a conference and walking 10 miles in a large conference center. But most days it was half that amount of steps. So this year I've reassessed, well, what are opportunities that I could walk more, and is that 10,000 goal realistic? Should I lower it? And one of the simple changes that I made, and this shows how goals can tie into a daily routine, is that almost every day I've got some sort of meeting, a phone meeting to do. So one of the things that I'm doing is I'm scheduling that meeting at the same time every day, and I'm walking while I'm doing the meeting. So I'm on the phone conducting a meeting, and I'm walking around the block. That's
a great idea. We should have you do that for the podcast.
Well, but I can't. My Wi-Fi won't carry me around the block, and I'd have to hold the laptop. Wouldn't work.
Get a hotspot or something. We could see that. So we could see you in action. The beads of sweat forming.
Oh no, I don't sweat, but I just walk.
And let's talk about establishing momentum when we're doing this, because I think it's easy. And again, I've been guilty of this in the past. I have been better over the last few years of meeting goals and paying attention to goals and becoming sort of more goal oriented. Although I've always been a goal oriented person. I put a goal out there. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that. I want to get my private pilot license. I'm going to do that. I want to get my real estate broker's license. I'm going to do that. So I've always been sort of goal oriented. But how do we establish momentum? It's January. We're excited. We're creating these goals. Here's my roadmap to take all 7 divisions this year. What happens in April or May when we've sort of, we're in the middle now? How do we maintain that?
Well, it's funny. Jerry Seinfeld, the comedian, has a story it's been getting around. It's fairly famous, and they were asking him about goal setting and how often he writes, and he said, well, he has a goal to work on his jokes every day, to write every day. And so what he does is he's got a big calendar, and every day that he fulfills this goal, this minor goal of writing every day, he puts a big red X on the calendar. And when you first start doing it, you have to get into the habit, you have to get used to it. But after a while, you look forward to writing that X. You look forward to the satisfaction of completing that. And he called it continuing the chain. And that's how he thinks about it in his head. I want to keep that chain of red X's on the calendar filling. And if you miss one, well, I guess that's okay, but you see that the chain is broken. And so then he invented the secondary goal of what's the longest chain I can do? How many days in a row can I do my task to fulfill that goal? And I even have an app that I use called Commit, which is on the iPhone. I don't know if it's for Android or not, but it's designed around this not break the chain idea. You set a goal for yourself, a little reminder. I want to walk 10,000 steps a day. It reminds me. And then it asks me, did you do it today? And I could say yes, and it shows the chain. And so I've been using things like that to establish a momentum, to get into what I hope is an easy habit that I'm expecting, and a practice I can keep following, and then it's just part of what I do.
And that's a good example of essentially establishing a habit or a practice that is going to help you achieve your goal. So your goal is to walk, 10,000 steps a day. How am I going to get there? You have this app, and it tracks it, and that is your habit. That by walking this 10,000 steps a day, that's going to help me meet my goal. I like it. Yeah,
and so if you're studying for the ARE. A good thing to keep in mind is I'm going to review the audio companion. I'm gonna have it preloaded on my iPod, on my phone, whatever, wherever it's the best for me to listen to it. And that way I know it's there. I don't have any excuses. And then I'll tie it into some routine. Let's say you work out twice a week, and that's when you do it. Let's say you're driving to work every day, and the commute's long enough. You can chip away at this audio companion. Make it part of your routine, establish a momentum, get a safe practice going that's reasonable, and that you'll do it, and then it'll really help you. And with the audio companion, I think it's better than the study guide, to be honest with you, because it brings the study guide to life, and you get to hear the charming David Doucette with his wonderful tenor baritone give it to you line by line. Well, you're much better at plugging our materials in this podcast than I am, but seriously, to go to your point, I think one of the things that we struggle with, like you said, goals should be just out of our reach. And when we do that, that means we have to work to achieve them. So some of us can just start building excuses of why I'm not achieving those goals. And if you look at our study package, which is 100% digital, there's no excuse of when you can't be using the study package. You can use the study guide on your iPad, even on your iPhone, on the subway, and the audio companion, you can listen to it wherever, on your commute, on the subway, when you work out, when you clean the house. So the point is, there's not one excuse that you can legitimately come up with to not prepare for one of the divisions, except the ones we haven't created yet, of course. But there really isn't. And the audio companion is my favorite as well. Just because it's powerful, and it allows us to multitask, and it allows us to take advantage of time that we otherwise might not have on the bus or commuting or in the car or whatever it is. The audio companion is my favorite too, because you have to do it. That's my favorite.
Right.
I don't have to work on it.
I know the CDS, by the way, I think it's just over 9 hours, so it's a lot of content, and the trick to if there is a trick to any of this material, and I've learned this from teaching candidates for the CSC. It's repetition. I mean, that's the trick. I think sometimes candidates think that they want to just read it a couple of times and get it. It's not going to work like that. Like, you just have to listen to the stuff over and over and over again until it just sinks in. And it's not about memorizing. It's about understanding the concepts and how to take those concepts and apply them to the questions you get on exam day. So you just got to spend a lot of time on the material.
Yeah. Well, my friend in San Diego said, he was describing this to me. He said, I'm in the exam and I can hear David's voice explaining it to me. And I made a joke like, yeah, his voice haunts me too, or something like that. But so I think there's something to that. I think we as architects are visual learners. I think if you're setting a goal to learn something, it's good to realize that about yourself, that we're visual. We'll probably remember the diagrams before we remember the text, and we'll probably remember the audio before we remember the text. And that's why we have the audio companion to begin with, I think.
Well, it is interesting, and I hear this a lot with the CSE as well, which is about 17 hours of audio, and people will listen to that 3 or 4 times, and especially the more successful candidates. But it gets to the point, like, people ask, well, how many times should I listen to the audio companion? And my answer is until you know what I'm going to say next, or you start completing my sentences. And I say that because that's what people have told me. They said, I know what you're going to say before you finish it. That's how familiar we want to become. And it's funny your friend said that you're sitting there in front of the computer taking the exam, and then, my voice, for better or for worse, is sort of in your head. That's a good thing.
Well, it kind of brings up, speaking of being in your head, it kind of brings up an important aspect of goals. Believe it or not, I know this might sound corny, but I took a Tony Robbins seminar a long time ago.
You did? Did you walk on the coals?
I didn't pay for it. I will preface that. Someone paid for it for me, but it was really helpful. I mean, there's a reason that he's rich and famous.
Yeah.
And so he had a lot of he had a lot of techniques of how to visualize success. And one of the things that he talks about, and it really ties into a larger field called neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP. And that can be your Google search for the day. But it's to visualize the success and visualize the fruits of that success. So if your goal is to be a licensed architect, visualize yourself proudly going into work and telling your coworkers, I did it. Visualize your boyfriend or girlfriend taking you out to dinner to congratulate you. Visualize your state, architect license in a nice frame on the wall. And this can tie for other goals too. If your goal is to save up a certain amount of money, visualize what you were going to plan to do with that money. If you were saving up for a trip to Hawaii, visualize yourself on the beach. And it helps motivate you, helps you maintain that focus. And really helps you stick to this idea. It's very effective.
I think it is really effective, and I've become over the years much more, I guess, serious about goals, or maybe serious isn't the right word, but if you look at what successful people do, one of the things they do is they have goals and they write their goals down. It's not just something that they say, I'm going to do it. And I'll give you an example. When I teach the CSE seminar, a lot of people, when they sign in, they don't have a date yet of when they're going to take the exam. And for the CSE, you usually need about 2 to 3 months of study time for that. And then we talk about it, and what I emphasize, and it's the same thing here for the ARE, is begin with the end in mind and pick your date. So if you want to take CDS next, pick your date of, I'm going to take it on February 28th, and now I'm going to start studying. Rather than, and I see this all the time, rather than saying, I'm going to take it in the spring, or I'm going to take it in the last week of March. Even saying the last week of March, it's not as specific as if I say March 26th. So I think being as specific as you can with your goals is going to help.
I also think, when the explorer Cortez arrived at the New World, I've told this analogy before, but when he arrived at the New World, they got off their ships and they encountered violent opposition from the Indians, and the men started to retreat back to the ships. And Cortez set fire to his boats and sunk them into the sea. And they said, "What have you done?" And he said, "Well, now you have no choice but to fight." And of course, it was a bloody massacre, and that's a whole other story. But this idea of burning your ships, one way to do that is if you know you're going to take CDS, it's one of your goals, then schedule the appointment. Yes, you could always reschedule it, but you know it's there. And these deadlines, I mean, architects thrive on deadlines. They really, so the more specific, the better. But I've met people that say things like, "I want to pass, all 7 divisions in a year." But they've been saying that for years.
Exactly. Yes.
A year is this vague.
Yes.
So no. You don't say, "I want to pass the ARE in a year." You say, "I want to pass the ARE by February 2015. That's a date, and it's a date that's coming. February 1st, 2015, even more specific, and that's coming. And then when November rolls around and you realize that you haven't achieved it, suddenly you can reassess and say, "Why? What did I miss?" But this vague, "I'll do it in a year. I'll do it someday." I don't buy that. I don't like it.
Yeah, I don't buy it either. And I think when you hear people, and I hear this all the time too, from CSE candidates, but when you hear that, it's also a bit of a reflection on how that person handles other aspects of their life. And that's why successful people are successful. I mean, they have their goals, they write them down, and they try and achieve them. Sounds simple enough, but when we get into April and May and we've lost that enthusiasm for setting the goals, it's harder to stay on track.
I know that there are people that do this. They think that by telling people their goals, it will force them to accomplish it. But I find that this often backfires. You only want to tell people that'll be supportive of you.
Yeah. Let me jump in, preface this. So now we're talking about should our goals be public or should they be private? So yeah, go ahead.
Oh, you're very official. Yeah. Well, just because what I've discovered, especially with students contacting me, and my own students, they say words like, "I made the mistake of telling everybody that I was going to do blank, and then I didn't, and I was embarrassed." First of all, if they're your friends, they should be supporting you anyway. But what I've discovered even more so is that sometimes they'll say to me, "And then my friend said that I'm an idiot for trying to do that." Whatever the goal may be,
right?
Even if it's something they really want, and they get downtrodden and they get a little bummed out about it. So you want to be a little protective about announcing these goals. I much rather would announce the goal after you've completed it. That's a great feeling to walk in the office and go, "Hey everybody, I passed the ARE," and then they go, "Oh, you didn't even tell me you were taking it." Like that whole thing.
Right.
What a great. Well, yeah, because I'm cool like that. That's how it works. You know what I mean?
I think there's definitely truth to that. And I would agree with that too. I don't think you have to sort of tell everybody to hold you accountable. But tell people close to you and tell your family and have them hold you accountable. If you're going out too much or you're going, out on Friday, Saturday nights and you should be studying for the exam on Monday, I mean, they're going to hold you accountable. And the people who are close to you, they're going to be supportive. And if they're not, go ahead.
Oh, I had a girlfriend at the time, not my wife, but at the time, this was a long time ago. But at the time, my girlfriend at the time was actually a great help with that. I would say, let's go out for the night, and she'd go, "Well, I know you want to study. Let's just go out for a little bit, or how about you study for an hour and then we'll go out." She was actually really helpful at reminding me of my own self-imposed goals.
And I think the point about if we do tell everybody, for example, in our architecture office, nobody wants to fail anything, in front of our peers. So if we announce it to everybody that we're studying for the ARE, a couple things could happen. A, we won't actually schedule it because for fear of failing it, now we got to tell everybody. But hey, if we don't take it, then we don't have to worry about failing it. So I like your idea, tell a few people close to you and then announce it to everybody like, "Hey, I passed," because I think that fear of failure, is particularly with us architects, is a big one. I notice it with the CSE as well. People are scared to fail because if they fail, now they have to tell everybody, their friends, their family, that they failed, and nobody knows what we do. Nobody knows how difficult the exam is, or how difficult architecture school is, or how difficult the CSE is. They just hear, "Oh, you failed. Oh, you must be a loser," So it's tough.
It can end up biting you. You're afraid to tell people. You're afraid to schedule it. And I call it a fear of success. I think, that, and this idea of fear, you want to deal with the fear. Use the fear to motivate you. You should be more afraid of not becoming licensed than you should about failing the test. That should be if you're going to use fear in any way, use it to motivate you. Because what's the old expression you always say? Courage is moving forward in spite of fear. So I like that idea. People think that they're the only ones dealing with this stuff. And it doesn't help when, because there's always one person in the office who makes it look effortless.
Yeah, totally.
Like I kind of imagine our co-author Aubrey it was like this.
Totally.
That everybody in the office is like, she makes it look so easy and it's hard for me. It was hard for her too. She worked really hard. She set a very aggressive goal and she did it. It wasn't. I know for a fact it wasn't easy for her. She worked at it. So that that you're not alone in this.
Well, a couple of points here. First off, a little off topic, but Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, which I told you I was reading now. I'm listening to it actually. I'm about 3/4 of the way through. It's fascinating. So anybody who wants to, after you're done the AREs, if you want a good book to read, check it out because he talks about people being talented. And they don't make it just on their own. They make it because of the circumstances that they were in. They were given some great opportunities along the way, and sort of part of their culture too. So it's a fascinating study on that. But in terms of telling people, I think it is important to tell the people close to us. And I might have mentioned this before, but I remember doing one CSE seminar, and this guy, he was sitting over on the right. He was a little sheepish. And he raised his hand, and we were talking about, what's important to us. And he said that his wife didn't even know where he was today. So here he is in the seminar with me all for 8 hours preparing for the CSC, and his wife doesn't even know where he is. And I think, he was sort of embarrassed. He essentially was embarrassed if he failed that he would have to tell her that he was a failure, basically. So yeah, don't do that.
That seems to add a lot of stress to your life. I mean, just keeping secrets from your close.
Yeah, ridiculous.
You don't have to tell every schnook in the office, but why make it harder for yourself?
Yeah, no. There's I think it's important to tell the ones closest to you so they can help you. If you're married and have kids, tell your spouse that, hey, I'm going to study 2 hours tonight. I'm going to go in the bedroom. I'm going to lock the door and I'm going to study. So don't call me. Don't disturb me. Don't let the kids knock on the door unless it's, an absolute emergency, So I think it's important to include people in our plans and our goals.
Right. That kind of does bring up a point that people that are married, especially people that are married with children, I have a theory that we manage our time better, if only because we have to. Because I've got a 3-hour window that I got to do this in, because I got to pick up the kid at wherever, or I got to take the wife where, and so I got to do it. I don't want to do it now, but I got to because it's my only time. So we end up being motivated by externals that we don't have.
We totally do, and not only married. Divorced as well. I speak for myself, but I will tell you, specific to that, I have a great relationship with my boys. I have them 50% of the time, so I have them a lot more than when we were actually married. But what's cool about that is I have the set time that I get them, and I know that, and I actually like that because that's the kind of stuff that can't move. Like for those that put things on their calendar and they color code them, and red is the kind of stuff that you can't move. Like that stuff doesn't move, so that allows me to plan everything else around it. And I like having that because then it forces me to plan. Just forces me to plan better.
Yeah. How often have we said, we got to get this done by this day because you'll say to me, I've got the boys on Monday, so I have to do it on Sunday.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, in a way, it's having kids. It shouldn't be an excuse for you not passing the ARE. If anything, it just means that you get to take advantage of the time and motivate you to finish it in that time period.
Well, I think let's talk about maintaining focus here, because the first thing I want to talk about is a Chinese proverb, and Michael Hyatt actually talked about this one. I think this is fantastic because I'm guilty of this one, and it's about a man who chases 2 rabbits catches none. And I'm the first to admit I'm guilty of that. finding myself in that situation sometimes. But I think that's fascinating. It's like you're unfocused. You're trying to catch two rabbits because but you're not going to catch any. You got to focus on one rabbit, so you make sure you catch that rabbit.
Well, it also kind of brings up this bigger idea of what's your goal? Is your goal to, with the Chinese proverb, is the goal to catch two rabbits, or is the goal to have dinner that night? So what's
right.
the bigger? Focus on the outcome, and that'll also help you as well. If your goal is to be a licensed architect, to pass all 7 divisions of the ARE, why? Why is that important? What's at stake for you? Potentially, it's a raise. Potentially, it's more responsibility at work. Potentially, it's the inroads to opening your own office too. I like the idea of keeping focus by understanding how this goal is vital to future goals.
And it's a good way to keep the motivation going as well. If you remind yourself of, why am I doing this? Why is this important? I want to do it to provide for my family, or to make my kids think I'm cool, whatever it is. But those are all important reasons that we want to be clear on. So when the going does get tough, like when we fail an exam, we just hang in there and we just keep going.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So
one of the last things here I want to talk about is the dealing with fear. We already talked about it a little bit because you jumped out of. You seem to jump around on me here. I'm trying to corral you in.
I'm just going organically with the conversation.
Well, you are the organic architect, right? You mentioned something earlier that I think is important, where we think we are the only ones struggling. And I've noticed that with the CSE as well, that CSE candidates and ARE candidates as well, we feel like we're the only ones who don't get this, or we're the only ones that struggle. Like everybody else has it figured out, and it's not the case. When I did the California supplemental exam, I actually did that with a buddy. We studied together. And in part it was because back then it was the oral exam, so you needed somebody to speak out loud with. You couldn't just read it. So we would do flashcards with each other, and he would hold it and listen, and I would hold it and listen. And just having a buddy, it's like a workout buddy or a hiking buddy or anything else. It really helped. I didn't do that with the ARE. The ARE, I was very lonely. I was studying all by myself, and I even ended up. And this is kind of an interesting, I even ended up realizing that there were too many distractions at home. So, at first I tried different rooms around the house, or apartment, I should say. There wasn't much of a house there, or different chairs, different lighting. Finally, I ended up, believe it or not, going to a cafe, and that was part of my ritual, was going to the cafe. It was a quiet cafe. Nobody would bother me. I'd sit at the same table. There was good lighting at the table. And that helped me. And that part of that came out just reviewing, well, how's my studying going? Right.
Just assessing, am I achieving these mini goals that I set for myself? And so, but if you can find a buddy, if you can find a little study partner or a group, it might help you. It might not too. It depends on your personality, I guess.
Yeah, the last thing I'll mention here about fear is, kids are, as kids teach us a lot, and they're way smarter than I think sometimes we give them credit for. But, my 5.5-year-old Remy, we went snowboarding the other day, and it was only their 3rd time snowboarding, and they just started learning it a couple of weeks ago. And we rode the big guy lift for the first time. So we go up, 3/4 of the way up the mountain. And we go down this steep part, and, they both, Jake and Remy, they both go down. We all go down. We get back on the chairlift to go up again. And I said to them, were you guys scared? And Remy, my 5.5-year-old, says, he got up there, he looked down, and he said, oh, this is steep, to himself. He's like, this is steep. But then I'm like, whatever, I'll go down it. Like, that was his attitude. He just got up there. He's like, oh, I'm going to go down it. And he did. He rocks anyway. But it's just that sort of like, yeah, he had that fear. He looked down. He's like, wow, this is steep. But he went down anyway.
People make the mistake that courage is not having fear. It's having fear but doing it anyway. That's the old saying. So, you'd be kind of inhuman if you didn't have fear about something like taking the ARE. You know, it's a big exam, and you look at the. I know for a fact the candidates look at the pass rates, 56%. You know, and then they get scared. Yeah, but focus on the 44 that did pass, not the 56% that failed.
Right. Well, and also I think, you know, and I think at the end of the day, if you're preparing well, essentially you're doing everything that you can. You take the exam, you let the chips fall where they may. If you don't pass, then you figure out and you get back on the horse. But I think at the end of it, you just do the best job you can. And that's all anyone can ask for. And if you do that, you will become a licensed architect. You just don't give up.
Never surrender.
Never surrender. Do you get nervous at all before you go on your speaking gigs? Like just before you go out on? No, and of course you don't.
No, no, not a bit.
Have you had your Michael Bay moment?
Oh no, I just felt bad for him.
That was bad.
Clearly, he's not a public speaker, but no, but I do get nervous. Believe it or not. Oh, here's an interesting story. I fought a traffic ticket last week, and I fought it. I mean, I fought like in front of the judge, and I have evidence, and I'm showing. I created charts, and I'm a professional public speaker. I speak in front of 10,000 people a year, and I was nervous standing in front of that judge.
Did you win?
No.
Yeah, no. I tried that once too, and they did no. Not so much.
I almost won. The judge said, "You put up a good fight, but there was this."
But get home and work on structurals.
Yes, exactly.
That's what he said. Let's see.
Oh, what about we should if we're going to wrap up the goals, we should talk about. I mentioned this a little bit, but setting a little present for yourself at the end. If you achieve this goal, and I write this down, So when I passed the ARE, I had a party.
Right.
We had a party. We had invited people over. We had the plates of food, and we had a big party. Half the people at the party had no idea what the ARE was. It didn't matter.
Right.
But they knew that Eric did something he was happy about, and so we had a party. And I was looking forward to the party, especially when I was getting to the last 2 or 1 exams. Some people treat themselves with actually not reading anything. I'm gonna go to the spa for the day and let my brain relax. So find a way to treat yourself, a way to celebrate your achieving that goal.
Yeah, I think that's important to reward ourselves because we deserve it, and I even think it's okay to celebrate passing each exam. You don't have to do the big party yet because you want to save that till you're a licensed architect, but going out with a nice dinner with your significant other, or going to the spa or something, or getting a nice massage, just something to acknowledge that, hey, I achieved that goal. Let me celebrate it for a moment, and once that's over, then I'll get back on the horse again.
Or buy yourself an Xbox, break it into 7 pieces, and every time you pass an exam, you give yourself a piece.
That sounds crazy.
That probably doesn't work.
Yeah, no, that doesn't work. Not so much.
Thanks for listening to the ARE podcast.
I guess
be sure to visit.
I hit that too early. I forgot he comes on and he talks right away.
So you got overexcited about your goal of finishing this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so anything else before we wrap up?
No, sir.
No, we covered it. All right, so thank you guys for joining us on goal setting, and on behalf of Eric Corey Freed, we will talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the ARE podcast. Be sure to visit architectexamprep.com and check out our other podcast episodes, video tips, and the ARE blog. Remember to plan, practice, and pass.